Are you preparing to become a PA or just considering the field? Wondering how you can apply successfully? Our guest today is the program director at the University of Iowa's PA program, and he'll tell you all about it.
Welcome to Admission Straight Talk, the podcast dedicated to graduate admissions and helping you approach the application process thoughtfully and successfully. Your host is Accepted's founder and world-renowned admissions guru, Linda Abraham. At Accepted, our mission is to get you to that unforgettable moment when you read your acceptance email and shout, "Yes, I'm in!" Confident you'll be attending the perfect program to help you launch the career of your dreams.
Welcome to the 462nd episode of Admission Straight Talk. Thanks for joining me today. This interview is all about getting accepted to a PA school, specifically the University of Iowa's PA program, which began a half century ago in 1972. In addition to listening to today's interview, I'd like to invite you to download Accepted's free guide, 10 Tips for Acceptance to a Physician Assistant Program at accepted.com/PA10tips. That's PA10 tips. Grab your free copy for advice on selecting the best PA program for you, writing your personal statement, interviewing effectively, and simply presenting the best application you possibly can. It's a competitive field out there, so you need to do the best you can. Download 10 tips for acceptance to a physician assistant program from accepted.com/PA10tips. Again, that's the letter P, the letter A, the number 10, and then tips. Today's guest, Tony Brenneman, grew up in Oregon, where he also earned his bachelor's degree in psychology and piano performance from Linfield College and an MSW from Portland State University. He worked as a social worker until he learned about the PA profession and joined University of Iowa's PA program, graduating with his Master's of Physician Assistant Studies in 1996. He worked in bone marrow transplant and in 2004 joined the UI PA program and became the program director in 2012, and also a professor at Carver College of Medicine in 2014. And with that, I want to welcome Tony to Admission Straight Talk.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm delighted to speak with you today. Now, before we dive into Iowa's PA program, can you talk a little bit about your own journey from studying piano performance to social work, all in Oregon, and then becoming a PA in Iowa?
It does seem a bit convoluted, doesn't it?
Not a typical bio major too,
Exactly. Well, I think, I had a journey that in some respects are very much like other people that have been thinking about joining the PA profession. They've started off in one career pathway or had bumps along the road and thought, well, this isn't a field that I can get into anymore. And so I'm going to go off and try other things. I will say when I headed off to my undergraduate experience, I thought for sure I was going to go into medicine. And as a 17-year-old, I was a young one going off into college. I wasn't quite ready to put my foot down to the pedal like I needed to at that point in time. But I'd always enjoyed playing the piano as well. So I had enrolled with a biology and piano performance plan. And when I decided maybe I needed to think about other things, I decided to switch it to piano performance and psychology, thinking along the lines of music therapy. So I still really wanted to be in that healthcare kind of background. And so that's where that was going at the time. And then once I graduated and learned more about music therapy, I decided it probably wasn't a field that fit who I was. And so looked around, what can I do with that psych degree? And a master's of social work was definitely one of the things that I could do. And there were social workers that worked in hospital settings. So that was what really intrigued me. So after I graduated, I went on to a hospital there in Portland, Oregon. I started off working in the emergency room, working the 4 to 1 a.m. shift. So I really got to see a lot of different experiences and different roles and of life that people go through in that kind of role, and then worked in rehabilitation at their rehabilitation center then for several years before moving to Iowa in their neurology department. And I did that just because I was ready for a change of pace. And Iowa, why not?
Okay.
So I moved to Iowa, and through my wife, I learned about the PA profession. Didn't even know.
Is she a PA?
No, she's not.
Oh.
But her friend's husband went through this program just before I did. And so she introduced me to that idea because I said, I told her about that desire to be in healthcare. And so I looked more into it and thought, yeah, this is something I'm really interested in. And so I went back to school, completed my bio and chem major needs and requirements, and now the rest is history.
Yeah, it seems to me like there are kind of two relatively common pathways to becoming a PA. One is I tried something else and this wasn't quite right, might have been related, might have been unrelated. And then I decided I want to become a PA. And the other is I started out pre-med and it's just not happening. So this is kind of, I can be happy with this too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have now a lot of our applicants now have decided way before even pre-med, so to speak, although they're taking many of the same courses, if not identical courses, decided way before undergraduate even that I really want to be a PA. I like what that profession, where they fit, what they do, and their opportunities. So I think it's part of the maturation of the profession. We started in 1967, so we're really not that old of a profession.
No, not at all.
50 years old. So that's sounding younger and younger to me.
Me too. Yeah, I want to thank you for raising that, because I think that is true. That it's not just a default or a second choice for unsuccessful pre-meds. It is a profession in its own right that has its own strengths and appeals, and that there is a growing number of applicants to PA programs that, like those who want to become a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief, or whatever, they know early on that that's what they want to do.
Absolutely.
All right, so now let's turn to the University of Iowa's PA program. Can you give an overview of the program, focusing on its more distinctive elements?
Yeah, so I think one of probably the most distinctive element is how much our program is embedded within the medical school. Yeah. So our program, our first class was admitted in 1972. And what I think is so fantastic, so we're only 5 years out from when the first PA enrolled in a program nationally. When our program was first brought to the attention of the Carver College of Medicine and they were told what PAs were supposed to do, the College of Medicine said, so they're going to be doing medicine, why wouldn't they learn what the medical students are learning? And from that time on, we've really been embraced by the College of Medicine, not only to have our students embedded in the framework, but our faculty are, and just in practice setting, in the clinical setting, we really are practicing to the top of our licenses here at the university. And I think that's because of that foundation all the way through, that the College of Medicine, even over 50 years ago, recognized that it was really important to teach our students in this manner. Now, we started off not with the amount that we have now of our students embedded within medical education, but it has grown over time. In 2014, the curriculum changed. So our medical school really looked at, what are we doing well and how could we do things better? And much like a lot of programs out there, they went to a more integrated curriculum as opposed to having discrete courses, biochemistry or pharmacology. It's now integrated in that physiologic models that we are doing. So, here's the cardiac system working well. Now it's not working well. So what do we need to think about from all of the foundational sciences through the treatments and care of our patients, which I think is a really great way to teach our students and for our students to learn, because it does give them a solid framework for the human that they're going to be taking care of and seeing in front of them. When they did that, we were no longer able to choose discrete courses that we wanted to have our students in. So we needed to move from, we were roughly about 65% of our courses taken with medical students to now 100% of our coursework in the fall, spring, and the following fall semesters. So the medical school the traditional medical school is a 2+2 model, 2 years of didactic and 2 years of clinical experience. Our college moved to an 18-month or 3-semester didactic experience and 5 semesters or 2.5 years of clinical experience. Mm-hmm. So when we shifted that way, we decided that, our students have been doing really well in this system. So let's jump in with the medical school and do this same coursework. So our students will take the first 2 semesters with the medical students. Our students are sitting side by side. When our lecturers come in, no one can tell a PA student from a medical student. We don't wear big crowns or different colored coats or anything like that.
No red PA on your forehead.
That's right, exactly. They're graded on the same curves. They are expected to achieve at the same levels, and they do. They are really. There's no difference. We've done a number of studies looking. Is there a difference between the two? And there really aren't. During the summer, then, when many medical students go off to do clinical experiences in their home community or research projects, our students take PA-specific coursework for the summer. And then then that fall, they come back and finish up the medical didactic portion of the classwork. And then we do another year of clinical experience before graduating. In our program, it will be 28 months total from admission to graduation.
What do you feel is the advantage of this arrangement for the PA students?
There are so many different advantages. Certainly, the obvious ones are we get to have top performers in their fields lecturing to our students to provide really strong foundation in both scientific and clinical practice and what's best ways to care for patients in those settings. We have the full resources available to us that a College of Medicine has. So we have, real people coming in to do exams on, and we have simulated lots of programs have simulation, but we heavily use simulation within our program with simulated patients coming in to do practice interviews with our students for learning how to do physical exams. So I think that's a huge one. And then there's just that wonderful synergy that you get with sitting side by side and recognizing we know the same information. So it really does allow for, I think, a change in perspective in practice as well. That it's not that PA isn't less than, and that it's not in competition with either. I think that we begin to understand that there's a balance to this healthcare system, and we need lots of different places for people to be and to work. And one size doesn't fit all. So they see lots of different opportunities through this process. So I think it's a very nice balance for both the medical students and for our PA students from the learning from each other kinds of perspectives.
Do you think that have you done any studies? Does it ease, let's say, teamwork after they leave medical school, whether it's as the PA or does the PA have a greater appreciation for the physician? Does the physician have a greater appreciation for the PA, greater respect?
I'm writing this down as a great idea for a research project. We haven't had that.
You heard it here, folks.
That's right. It would be a great one to see. Yes.
Right. Okay. Now let's move on here. But that was a fascinating discussion. What is a common misconception about Iowa's PA program that you would like to dispel?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think people think, oh, I'll never get into that program. And that's not true. Absolutely not. The only way you'll find out is if you apply.
That's true.
So don't defeat yourself ahead of time,
Don't reject yourself.
Right, exactly. We look for lots of different people because you can bring in really, really, really brilliant people that basically you can hand them a book and say, here's medicine, learn it. And they can take a test and pass it. And that's not the best healthcare provided all the time. I mean, I will say that there's definitely room for that as well. But, we really want to see that well-rounded individual that has had life experiences, maybe hasn't had the perfect GPA, or they don't think they have all the boxes ticked in just the right way, because that to me brings so much more to the table, not only to the conversations that we have when we're in our small groups and the activities that go around that, but when it comes to relating to patients. It gives you another perspective that if you've never really been challenged in your life, it's hard to relate to people that are feeling very, very challenged and very, very vulnerable because of their healthcare status at that moment in time.
Right. Right. Good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Now, I was using the CASPA application. Is it rolling admissions between April when CASPA opens and October 1, which is your deadline?
Right.
Is it advantageous to apply earlier in the cycle, which is usually the case with rolling admissions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do use rolling admissions. And as you've said, it's more advantageous to go earlier. We usually do 5 sets of interviews, sometimes 6, depending on the year, starting in July. And they typically will be wrapped up in December. Occasionally, we've gone into January for this set of interviews. And so if you're not selected in the first group, you stay in the mix and you may be selected in the second or the third, because we're always, every year, the pool, it's so very interesting how much it can change from year to year, who's applying in that particular period of time, who you're competing with in that particular pool as well. And so it is advantageous to apply earlier because we do keep going back through and looking over our entire group, because we do want to see, as I said, a diverse class of individuals, because I think you learn as much from each other as you do from the amount of knowledge we tend to pour into people's heads while they're here.
Right, for sure. What kind of clinical experience is the Iowa PA program seeking? Is it hands-on, working as a nurse or medical technician or whatever, or is shadowing adequate?
Our preference is hands-on kinds of care. So as you pointed out, nursing assistant, medical assistant, anywhere where you're laying hands on patients, I think really helps you understand what does healthcare mean and what might I need to do? And it gives us a good perspective of the people that we're going to be working with as well, and how we need to hold everybody up in the process, and that every job has its challenges, and to recognize those things. So we really do like to see the hands-on. We do give percentages based on the different kinds of activities. So certainly we give hour for hour credit for those hands-on roles that we know of for sure, like the nursing assistant or the medical assistant.
Scribe? What about a scribe?
Scribe, I think we give about 50% of the total hours. I would direct anybody that's listening to this to contact our program administrator, Dr. Tom O'Shea. He is more than happy to tell you, how this would count if you're at all concerned. Because we also have, EMTs that apply to the program, and that can be a lot of hands-on, or it can be very little hands-on, depending on the role. Certainly an EMT in downtown Chicago is probably a very, very, very busy individual putting their hands on a lot of people. An EMT in very rural Iowa, maybe not so much. So there is a little bit of varying on how much credit each role might get, and what the activities were that they would be doing.
And there is a minimum number of hours that you require, isn't there?
Right. Yes, there is. I think right around 750 is what we're asking for as a minimum.
All right. And what about non-clinical community service? Soup kitchen, homeless shelter, whatever.
All of those things add to the richness of who we are looking for. I think those kinds of activities really say a lot about who you are as a person, and adds to the experiences that you will benefit from, and your patients will eventually benefit from as well, because you
have a perspective.
You work in those settings. And so I think any of those kinds of activities are valued from our standpoint.
Now, the University of Iowa PA class, I believe, is 25 students, correct? So it's fairly
we are
small.
a small class, yes.
That can be great if you get in, but how many applications do you receive for those 25 spots? Is there any preference for Iowa residents from the Carver Medical School? And do you have any plans to increase that size as the profession grows? I mean, it's grown enormously.
It has. At this point, we do not plan on growing any bigger. We have 25 since we began, and we really do like that. We really feel like we get a chance to connect with each individual student, that we really get to know them well in this process. And so we really see that as our mission, and the way we feel that we function in the best way. Thinking of the number of applications, it does vary year to year, and it kind of goes up and down. As I think probably anybody applying to PA school is aware, applications just keep increasing, and the number that people are applying to is increasing. On average, we get around 800 to 900 applications for our 25 positions, and we narrow that down. And eventually we'll interview about 120 individuals for our 25 positions.
That's pretty intense numbers there.
It is. But again, I don't want to scare anybody off, because what I tell all of the people that are coming for an interview is you clearly all have the capability, because you've demonstrated that. And so I think it comes down to, certainly we want to see that capability, but really, who are you? And that's why we have you come for an interview. I know it might be of interest to people that are applying. We are doing in-person interviews.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
For the year that COVID first came out, we went virtual. All schools, I think, pretty much did. And but we are back to doing in-person. And I think we had great luck. I want to say we had great success with the virtual, but I think it's something that's really, really helpful for Iowa in particular, is for people to come and see, oh, it's not what I thought it was. Iowa is a beautiful place. It's very hilly around here. Now, people that think of hills in the Oregon sense are not going to, or the California sense, find that here.
But, the California sense, right?
Right. But if you think, kind of the rolling hills or even areas that you think of Wisconsin are clearly here in Iowa as well. Do we have flat places? Absolutely, but not in this area of Iowa. So,
okay.
So I think getting people here just to see what Iowa looks like and could imagine how they would enjoy it here, and then to see our amazing facilities. I think those two things are huge selling points for people to consider in the process of interviewing. Because the other thing I often tell our applicants is, not only are we interviewing you, you're interviewing us, and you need to find the program that fits you best and that you think you'll succeed in and thrive in. So I think, getting people here is really important for those people that just can't imagine living in the Midwest. I will say, you pointed out, I went to school in Oregon. I actually grew up in Oregon, lived there 28 years before I moved, and swore, there were two things I swore I would never do, and that was live in the Midwest, to teach. And life has a way of teaching us new lessons all the time.
Not to swear.
That's right, exactly. Not to never second guess.
Never say never, right?
That's right, exactly. So
right.
I think there's opportunities to have people come here for that in-person interview. I think I got distracted from what your full question was.
The other part of the question was, is there any preference for Iowa residents? Not only at the interview stage, but in general.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always interested in Iowa applicants. That being said, we frequently have more out-of-state admitted to our program than in-state.
Oh, really?
The numbers that are applying to our program, though, when we look at that 800 applicants to our program, probably about 700 of them are from out of state, 100 are from in-state. So the percentages maybe weigh a little bit more towards the Iowan in those two different categories, but it's not like you can only accept 10% from out of state or anything like that. Exactly. You couldn't accept 2.5 people anyways. So, is there anything that you look for in applicants that, let's say, you didn't look for 5 or 10 years ago? Yeah, that's also a wonderful question. I think two things that I really look for are grit and resilience. And I think that's something that we've all talked about, is I would rather take that student that I think they're going to need extra help to get through the program, or they might find it a bit of a struggle, but their background, their life experiences demonstrated that they have that grit and resilience to get through really difficult times and really challenging times. And they know how to refocus and to handle what's being thrown in front of them. Because let's be honest, it was always this way in medicine. There was always things that were getting thrown in front of you. It was never exactly as you hoped the day would go. And now COVID has more than put that into evidence for that. So I would rather have that person that has struggled a bit than one that just sort of, it just was so easy all the way through, because
Sailed through.
Yeah, exactly. Because once that first hiccup happens, and it will, it's a big tragedy, and it's really, really hard to change direction or to refocus, because the skills haven't been learned yet along those ways. And that's sometimes why a student may or may not be selected. Maybe it's just, we often talk about they'll be a fantastic PA with a little more cooking.
I mean, sometimes we see applicants, not just to PA school, but in general, they feel like to show, I don't know, to show that they didn't sail through, they have to almost write a pity essay.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would recommend that per se, but I think sometimes people are concerned about talking about a challenge and how what they learned from it and how they moved forward, because they don't want to point out that there was a struggle. And I think programs get really good at looking at applications and can see there's something interesting here. I wonder if they explained it or talked about it. And when it's not, it raises additional questions. And so I think, just being upfront about that and talking about that in your letter is a useful thing. I think for many programs, whether it's medical school or PA school, to go, oh, they've really gained from this experience, and not to say, going out and looking for a horrible thing to happen, or to make something big out of something that really wasn't that eventful. And if you have been able to go through, wonderful. We definitely have people that come into our program as well that way. But I think I think it's just one of those things that when I'm looking for that well-rounded, full individual that brings a lot to the table, it's that resilience and grit that shows I know how to stay focused, even if there's the sky falling down around me a little bit.
Or that you came out stronger after the sky gets fall down.
Absolutely.
I sometimes tell a story when this comes up with clients or applicants. When our children were young, we had children fairly close together. We had a double stroller, and the double stroller had a metal frame. And when our youngest child was a baby, the metal frame broke. And I didn't want to go out and get another double stroller because I knew I wasn't going to need it much longer. And so I found a place that could solder the metal frame. And afterwards, I went to pick it up and it looked great. And I said, now, is this going to be a point of weakness? Is it going to be more likely to break where you soldered? And he said, no, the solder will be stronger than the rest of the frame. The solder is stronger. And that's the true reflection that should come through in an essay about a challenge overcome. It's the overcoming and the lessons learned that are far more important than what actually happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. I think, to me, the other piece that comes out of this is this person has the ability to self-reflect and to take in that piece, because it is really important in any role in healthcare to be able to self-reflect.
Oh, yeah.
Could have I approached this patient in a different way? Could have I said something different? Or, oh my gosh, this outcome was bad. What do we need to take away from this so that this doesn't happen again? And it's no reflection on whether you are a good care provider. It is about what I see that being as a good person that is going to be even a better healthcare provider, because they don't want to do those kinds of things again, and they want to reflect on how we can do it even better. And I think it's hard when everything keeps going extremely well to reflect on that, because where do you take it from there? And great if that has been your experience, but I think even in those good times, there are things to self-reflect about. And so
sure.
Demonstrate those self-reflections is an important piece.
Wonderful answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, do you accept, let's say, update letters from applicants at any point in the process, or letters of intent? Probably update letters more.
Yeah.
Either
Yeah.
from waitlist applicants or applicants who haven't heard from you.
Absolutely. No, we always welcome those. We add them to their files. We do consider them as they come through. So I would encourage that. We try, once we get to the place where we have filled our class, we still have a wait list, because occasionally, students will say, I just found out that there's this program right next door to me and I don't have to move. And so I think I'm going to go there. And then somebody will come off the wait list and be offered that position. And any of those updates help us keep track of what's going on in your life, what is of interest to you. Maybe those are things that just move you up a little bit further, even on that wait list. So
great, thank you. On a forward-looking note, what advice would you give to PA wannabes, potential applicants who want to apply this upcoming cycle? Right now, when this interview airs, it's going to be March 22nd, at least that's the plan. And shortly before CASPA's April opening, I believe. What would you like listeners for this cycle to know?
Well, I think certainly be sure that you've achieved all the things that you need to qualify for our program. So please go to our website. We have all the things that you need to know about for admissions are listed right there. And so, have you gotten the coursework completed that needs to be? For instance, we want biochemistry to be completed before December 31st. Now, some of the other science courses may be able to be completed after that 31st, even though you won't, because you're not going to come in until the next fall. So we start interviewing in July for the next year.
Got it.
And so sometimes some of our classes are required to be completed at the time of application, and some of them can be completed, after, even though you've been admitted, you still need to complete them, but it can be done in that remaining period of time. So be sure that you're looking at the application, and are you doing all those kinds of things that will qualify you at the basic level. And then many of the things that we've talked about, what are things that you want to highlight? Are there activities that you think are particularly helpful? Are there challenges that you've overcome? Certainly write about those kinds of things. As with any application, be sure that your letters of reference you can count on them being good. And so making sure that you clarify that with the people that you're asking, and following, again, every school has a little bit different recommendations on what they would like to see. We want to see one that is an academic reference, and then one can be work, one can be whoever else you would like as a reference. So be sure that those pieces are all in place in order for your application to keep moving through at the speed that you would like it to be moved through our system at. If you would be selected for an interview, we use the MMI models, the multiple mini interviews. I do know that there are lots of products out there on the market for you to practice MMI questions, MMI responses. They have very canned ways of doing things. And I will say it's recognizable when it's a canned response or a canned way that the company recommends that this is the best way to do an MMI. I want to see you. I don't want to see the canned response. So I will say, even though you can have a good answer with all of the pretty frame around it, that probably won't get you where you need to go. I would rather have that person that's just showing us who they are and talking about how they would respond to that particular scenario or question or topic that we're having them talk about, because that's who you are. That's who
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to hide who you are when you get
Yeah.
right down to it.
Yeah.
But now you just mentioned one mistake to avoid. Are there other mistakes that applicants should be aware of and avoid when they apply?
That's a great question. I think for me, that I think for us, that is probably the biggest one that they should try to avoid is don't over practice, don't over prepare, be who you are. I think are the big pieces, and we really do try to keep it very relaxed and friendly, and we do ask for feedback after they've left us anonymously, so they don't have to worry about it being associated with them in particular. But how did it feel? And that is one of the pieces we often hear back is, I just felt so comfortable. Thank you for making me feel relaxed. And again, I think it's a two-way street here. I want to know who you are, and I want you to know who I am as well. And so we really do try to practice what we preach.
All right. Now, one question I forgot to ask, and I think you touched on it a minute ago, is in terms of academic preparation. So, I mean, you mentioned that, they have to have certain courses and they have to get that done before they, by certain dates. But do you want a particular major? I mean, is piano performance okay? As long as they take the science classes?
Yeah, exactly. We've had English majors. We have had PhDs in public health. Wow. We have, all sorts of different backgrounds coming through our program. And I think it goes back to what I've talked about earlier. It just adds to the richness of who our classes are. Because everybody brings their own skills and their own skill sets. And once they get into our program, we are a pass-fail program. You do not have to, that 3.0 or 3.5 or whatever those requirements are. And what I love to tell our students is P equals PAC, because, just like medical school, person that graduates last in their medical school program is called doctor.
Right.
If nobody asks me, were you at the top of your PA class, in the middle of the PA class, you graduated from an accredited PA program and you have met the requirements that are needed to be a PA. So the way I look at this pass-fail is it really does take away that competitiveness that frankly had to do in undergraduate experience in order to achieve and rank above X or Y. And then you can take those skills that they're all bringing in order to teach each other and help each other through programs. Because this month you may be sailing and top of the class and you can help others. And at the next month, the roles may be reversed. And so you really want to be able to reach out and rely on each other where they're bringing in those special learning backgrounds that they carry with them. So yeah, they have to have gotten all of the prereqs that we require. I do like to see solid coursework in sciences, and what I mean by that is, I sometimes see applications where they have a 4.0, but they've taken 13 semester hours each semester in one science course. And to me, that doesn't tell me that you are capable of the amount of science you're going to have to take at one time in our program or in any program, whether you're embedded completely in a medical school or not. And so what I really want to see is, did you take even two, and you were also a student athlete, and all the hours that had to go into doing that. So you were juggling many balls at one time.
Or working. You
took 4 science courses at a time and did exceedingly well, and then you did the fun courses all at one time. However you do that. But I think that it's so important to demonstrate you can do that, and you can do it with a fairly good semester hour load, whether that's 15 or 16 hours, because you're going to jump into most programs where you're going to be taking 20 or 22 semester hours of coursework. And the majority of it's science. We do have, some that are less science heavy, but it's certainly all related to the same thing. And so you don't want to go from really 0 to 90 without having had some idea of what that means in preparation.
All right. Thank you again. What would you have liked me to ask you?
I don't know if there was anything that you didn't ask about. I think sometimes, as I said earlier, Iowa can be discounted as a little farm country area. I will say, as I said earlier, I came from Oregon, where I didn't think I'd ever live in the Midwest. And now I lived here longer than I did in Oregon. There is a lot going on here. There's a lot going in its favor. And there are some very beautiful areas. People may not know this, but you can ski in Iowa, down, not just cross country. There's lots of great biking. There's lots of great outdoor activities. And it's just a wonderful community, the Iowa City area. So don't dismiss it because it's the Midwest. There's a lot going on here.
You know that I told you this before we went on the air, but my husband went to the University of Iowa, and he always speaks of it with enormous fondness, how beautiful it was, how lovely it was. The Iowa River, apparently it freezes and some people walk across it, and lovely campus and all that. So while I have not visited Iowa, he went back before we got married and found that all his friends had by then moved on. So he did not go back since we've been married. But
Sure.
He has nothing but the nicest things to say about that time that he spent there. So
Yeah.
although I can't vouch from personal experience, I can understand what you're saying, Tony. And at this point, I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining me and sharing your expertise. This has been really delightful. Where can listeners learn more about the University of Iowa's Physician Assistant Program and earning a Master's of Physician Assistant Studies there?
Sure. Probably the easiest way is just to type in UIowa PA program.
Okay.
U and then Iowa PA program. But our URL is medicine.uiowa.edu/PA/.
And we'll link to that if that kind of was too hard to jot down. We're going to include links in the show notes at accept.com/462 to the University of Iowa's PA website, as well as to other resources that may be helpful to listeners. And one of those resources is 10 Tips for Acceptance to Physician Assistant Programs, which is a free download from Accepted. Now that you want to be a PA more than ever after listening to Tony talk, don't apply without having these tips in your hip pocket. It's easy. Just go to accepted.com/PA10tips. Again, it's accepted.com/PA10tips and grab your copy. This is Admission Straight Talk produced by Accepted, and I am your host, Linda Abraham. I'll talk to you again next week. Are you preparing to become a PA or just considering the field? Wondering how you can apply successfully? Our guest today is the program director at the University of Iowa's PA program, and he'll tell you all about it. Welcome to the 462nd episode of Admission Straight Talk. Thanks for joining me today. This interview is all about getting accepted to a PA school, specifically the University of Iowa's PA program, which began a half century ago in 1972. In addition to listening to today's interview, I'd like to invite you to download Accepted's free guide, 10 Tips for Acceptance to a Physician Assistant Program at accepted.com/PA10tips. That's PA10tips. Grab your free copy for advice on selecting the best PA program for you, writing your personal statement, interviewing effectively, and simply presenting the best application you possibly can. It's a competitive field out there, so you need to do the best you can. Download 10 Tips for Acceptance to a Physician Assistant Program from accepted.com/PA10tips. Again, that's the letter P, the letter A, the number 10, and then tips. Today's guest, Tony Brenneman, grew up in Oregon, where he also earned his bachelor's degree in psychology and piano performance from Linfield College and an MSW from Portland State University. He worked as a social worker until he learned about the PA profession and joined the University of Iowa's PA program, graduating with his Master's of Physician Assistant Studies in 1996. He worked in bone marrow transplant and in 2004 joined the UIPA program and became the program director in 2012 and a professor at Carver College of Medicine in 2014. Tony, welcome to Admission Straight Talk. All right, now do the close again. We'll include links in the show notes at accept.com/462 to the University of Iowa's PA website, as well as to other resources that may be helpful to you listeners. Thanks again to Tony Brenneman for joining me. And thank you, listeners, for also joining me. And one of those resources that might be helpful to you is 10 tips for acceptance to a physician assistant. You know what? I'm going to do this again. I don't like where I'm going with it. Thanks again, Tony, for joining me and also for the link. We're going to include links in the show notes at accept.com/462 to the University of Iowa's PA website, which could be a little bit hard for you to jot down, as well as to other resources that may be helpful to listeners. And one of those resources is 10 tips for acceptance to physician assistant programs, which is a free download from Accepted. Now that you want to be a PA more than ever after listening to the show, don't apply without having these tips in your hip pocket. It's easy. Go to accepted.com/PA10tips. Again, that's accepted.com/the letter P, the letter A, the number 10, and then the word tips, TIPS, and grab your copy. This is Admission Straight Talk produced by Accepted, and I am your host, Linda Abraham. I'll talk to you again next week.